What's up, team? It's Rob Mack from M3 Beats, and today let's talk about the parts and the process to upgrade to the complete BMW M Performance carbon fiber and alcantara trim kit for your BMW F30.
Rob Mack.
BMW sells an M Performance trim kit that only consists of the dashboard panels, 4-door pull covers, and the center console trim. What you may not know is that there's a total of 6 parts to this kit that are compatible with all BMW F30s. 1, the interior trim kit. 2, the shifter knob. 3, the shifter trim. 4, the armrest. 5, the parking brake handle and boot. The reason why all of these parts aren't sold as a complete set is probably due to the fact that the automatic and manual transmissions have different part numbers for the shifter trim and the shift knob. But that gives you some flexibility to pick and choose which pieces work best for your build and budget. For me, I wanted to get rid of all of the glossy wood and silver interior trim to match the murdered carbon fiber aesthetic that I'm going for with my build. But honestly, this whole thing started because I needed to replace the armrest that was damaged by the previous owner. You might be saying to yourself at this point,
"But Rob Mack, you said that there were 6 parts and you only listed 5.
That's an astute observation, my young friend. The 6th part is the BMW M Performance steering wheel, but there's a lot to unpack with that part and installation, and we'll cover that in a second video next week. But I'll tell you this part right now. There are actually 2 steering wheel options that match this interior trim kit. The one I installed has an integrated race telemetry display and shift indicator lights, and the other one is just a basic M Sport steering wheel wrapped in alcantara. This DIY is pretty easy, and you'll only need a trim tool, a couple of Torx bits, and a pair of pliers to complete this entire job in just over an hour. So let's get to it. The armrest. The first thing you'll need to do is get in your back seat. Using your hands or a trim tool, gently pull back on the back cover of the arm underneath the armrest that has your vent controls. If you don't feel like you have enough clearance, you can disconnect the cigarette lighter and the climate controls and seat heater buttons to completely remove this part out of the way. But as you see here, I was able to do this job with just pulling the panel off. Take a pair of pliers and pry up the tension loaded spring or release the tension. Once you have that complete, then you need to pull the 2 pins from the left and right sides that are holding the tension spring in place. You can do that by pushing outward from the opposite end with a pair of pliers. Once it comes free, then you can grip it with the pliers from the outside edge and pull it away from the armrest. Remove the spring. Getting the armrest to come free is a little bit tricky, but what I found out through a course of trial and error is if you open the armrest and tilt it as far back as it will go, it should lift straight up at that point. If you do it the right way and not the way that I just showed you in this video, you won't lose the little plastic gear that fell off in this slow motion sequence that took me a half an hour to find because it went down one of the vents. If you happen to knock that little gear off, it's pretty easy. It just snaps in place into one of the large openings on either side of the armrest. There is only one, and I don't think it matters which side you put it on because there's a place for it on each side, but just clip it back in there before you try to install the new armrest. Next, you'll insert the new armrest. Rock it, you should turn it more towards the back seat to insert it without disturbing the little gear. But as you can see, I held it with my finger and was able to get it on without disturbing the gear again, but it took a few tries to do it that way. But watching my own video later, I see that I could have done it a little bit better. Once it's in place, make sure the armrest completely seats and locks, and then you can go back to reinstalling the spring tension gear in reverse order. Completely open the armrest while applying pressure with a pair of pliers to the tension spring until it locks back into the retaining clip. Once the armrest is in place, the only thing that you have to do now is reattach any connections that you've disconnected and then reattach the rear climate control panel to the back of the armrest. You do this just by snapping it in the same way that you snapped it off. The iDrive trim. In this section, I had already removed the iDrive clip and my video had stopped recording. So I'm going to take off the new piece and reinstall it again so you can see the process. You only need a trim tool to lift up on one of the edges of the center console trim. And then once you get it free, you can pull it up with your hand the rest of the way. Once you have this trim piece free, there's only a connection to the iDrive knob that you need to disconnect. And then there are 3 T20 Torx bits that you need to remove the iDrive control module. Then you take your new trim and the iDrive control module, reattach the iDrive module with the 3 Torx screws, reconnect the iDrive module connector, align the trim piece, and then apply downward pressure to snap it back in place. The shift knob. Gently peel off the iDrive cover using a small screwdriver or trim tool to expose the inner panel. It's just held on by glue, and if you go slowly, you'll eventually be able to pull the whole thing off. Once you have the cover removed, there's a single T8 Torx bit holding the entire shift knob together. Carefully remove this T8 Torx screw. Not shown in the video, there's a translucent white panel underneath the screw attached to the silver piece that you see in my hand here that you need to poke out and remove, and you'll have to transfer that over to your new shift knob. Your new shift knob will come with a new front cover, a new diffuser panel with an M logo, and a new parking button. Gently lay the parking button on top of the rear cover, and then align the front cover and hold it in place with your hand. Here's where you would reattach the white diffuser that I talked about a moment ago before inserting the T8 Torx bit screw. Tighten this Torx screw down and then take the new diffuser panel and peel off the adhesive backing and carefully place it into the new front cover. The shifter trim. To remove the shifter trim around the new shift knob, you only need a trim tool to pry up on the edge closest to your seat. Gently remove the entire panel and then replace the new panel in reverse order and apply downward pressure to lock it in place. The e-brake handle and boot. Start by opening your armrest so that you can have a little more room to work with, and then insert a trim tool into the back of the e-brake cover closest to your seat. Once you have all of the retaining clips to the boot free, then all you do is grab the handle with your right hand and pull it away from the cover, and everything should release. It's a good idea at this point and at any point in these trim piece installations to clean any areas that you want underneath those trim panels. Install the new e-brake cover in the same manner in reverse. The e-brake handle has a groove that makes it impossible to install it in the wrong orientation. So just place it on the e-brake, guide it in slowly, enough to where you can reattach the clips that hold the boot cover in place. Then apply downward force to the e-brake handle itself to make sure that it locks in place. The dash panels. Using your hands or a trim tool on the center dash panel, pull it away from the dashboard. Be careful not to pull it away too fast before you release the skinny part that is on the passenger side. Using a trim tool, release the clips that hold the vents into the dashboard trim. You will also need to disconnect your hazard light button connector before you can completely remove the unit away from the dashboard. I pulled the dashboard trim away from the field of view and didn't realize I wasn't showing where I removed the vents, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you get the vents removed, replace them into the new dashboard trim panel and then reconnect all the connections in reverse. Once you've reconnected everything, then you just press the dashboard panel into place the same way you took it off. The second dashboard panel is on the driver's side to the left of the steering wheel. Using your hands, pull this trim piece away from the dashboard. Normally you won't have any wires or connectors behind this panel, but for me I have a vent integrated P3 gauge that I installed last year, so that's why you see the wire hanging out the back of my install. Just like on the main dashboard trim, there's a row of clips that you need to unlock so that you can release the vent from the dashboard trim. Once you remove the old trim piece, you replace it with the new trim piece and snap it in place. The next thing you need to do is guide the vent and trim panel back into its original location and press inward to lock it in place. The door pulls. The door pulls are a little tricky and can be a little tight to take off, but after you do the first one, you'll get an idea for how much force you need to use in order to remove the other three. There's a small slot on the underside of each door pull that you can stick in a trim tool all the way through and then start applying outward pressure, pulling away from the door to release the clips in the door panel. It will feel like you're gonna break it, but if you just keep applying consistent pressure, eventually you will get these things to release. On every single door, one or more of these metal clips got stuck into the door trim piece, and I had to remove them with a pair of pliers by sliding them out and then reattaching them into the locations where they go. If you don't do this step, you will not be able to reattach your new door trim. The other thing that I'll mention is that there's no difference between the front and rear trim panels on either the left or the right side. They're the same pieces, so as long as you install the right hand panels on the right side and the left hand panels on the left side, it doesn't matter which ones go in the front or the back. To reattach them, start at the bottom, align the hook clip, and then slightly bend the top hook clip to lock that in place, and then you'll squeeze the rest of the handle to lock the middle clips. You'll know you've done this part correctly if everything clips into place and there are no giant gaps in between the door pull and the door pull cover. Repeat the same process for the other three doors. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel to follow my build. You can always hit me up on Instagram at M3Beats to ask me a question or follow my car photography. Gratuitous B-roll.
Rob Mac.